You're listening to A Mighty Fortress, celebrating 500 years of Lutheranism.
A mighty fortress it is our God, a trusty shield and weapon.
Hello and welcome to A Mighty Fortress. I'm your host, Jake Zabel. Welcome to another episode of SemRadio Archives, where we listen to the best of Sem Radio. Hope you enjoy it.
SemRadio.
What if I told you that there isn't a single end times antichrist, but that the devil has filled the world with countless anti-Jesuses? What if I told you that the devil only has 7 major flavors, 7 major lies that the devil uses to flavor his dish of deception stew? That's what Broken is going to break down for you.
Over a period of 8 weeks, Sem Radio has been going through the book by Pastor Fisk, Broken, 7 Christian Rules that every Christian ought to break as often as possible. Throughout this book, we have looked at the lies mysticism, moralism, rationalism, prosperity, pragmatism, perfectionism, licentiousness, and the ever lie. These are the 8 lies that are found throughout the book. This is not the interpretation of Pastor Fisk, but this is my summarization and my interpretation of these 8 lies. The first 7 lies all contribute to the one major ever lie. The 7 lies are all false teachings that all masquerade as true Christianity. By following these teachings, you think that Christianity is broken. Throughout the book, Pastor Fisk breaks down these 7 lies to reveal the truth. It is not the church that is broken, it's we who are broken. And so, we're going to start now with week 1, mysticism.
Mysticism.
Okay, so let's break down mysticism. The first lie that Pastor Fisk looks at in this book is the lie of mysticism. In Pastor Fisk's book, he likes to use a lot of characters to describe each one of his lies, and I kind of like that thing, so I'm going to tend to use his characters as well, but I'm going to try to tweak them a little bit. I'd like to also put this out that this isn't straightforward Pastor Fisk's theology. I am tweaking it slightly, to put in my own language and help me interpret and understand it.
Okay.
And Hayden here, he's read the book as well, so
yeah, it's a great book.
He can throw some stuff in. But so the first one is mysticism. Pastor Fisk calls her the educated harlot. I like to think of she's a temptress, is what she is. So the point of mysticism is it's the worship of your emotions. The motto of mysticism is you can find God in your heart, feelings, and emotions.
Okay, so it's about what you feel about God.
Yeah, it's all like these new things you get in the Pentecostal churches and all the praise songs and that if you don't feel something, you have to feel something to know that you're getting salvation. So you got to get that feeling so that you know that you're saved.
Yeah, that's very dangerous there, isn't it? It creates a whole lot of problems. What if you don't feel these feelings that you're supposedly supposed to?
Yeah, and that's the whole problem. Is she's like, because you don't feel it, then how do you know you're saved?
And it makes the focus of the church on how you feel when you go there rather than speaking the truth. You are saved because God says you are, and not because of anything that you feel. So it kind of comes back to a works thing, doesn't it? You have to do things in order to feel the right way.
Yeah, everything's kind of works in a way. Because mysticism, because it's not just a church thing, but it's because the whole point of mysticism is this whole New Age religion. If you know what New Age is, Hayden?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can decide whichever religion suits you. So if you want to be a Christian, fine. You want to be a Christian and you want to, go do some Buddhist meditation, do some Wicca witchcraft, maybe get a bit of Hinduism incarnation, karma. You can choose your own religion by whatever makes you feel happy, whatever makes you feel right.
Yeah.
A real selfism again.
Yeah, it is very selfish, selfism based. again. So
Yeah. And the whole point of mysticism is so she tells the lie that if it's not making you happy, then it's not true religion. That's her lie. She's going to, she teaches, first when you're a Christian, you're walking down the straight and narrow. Everybody knows that.
Mm.
And the point of, as a Christian, we suffer. We don't always have the perfect life. The Bible mentions so many times that as Christians, we are going to suffer in this life. And so the straight and narrow is sometimes going to be filled with potholes, and it's just going to be dry, dirt, broken road, probably dirt road, gravel road. It's not always going to be smooth driving.
No.
But mysticism tries to convince you that, oh, this road, look at it, it's covered in potholes, it's falling apart, it's going to damage your car. What you need to do is find another road.
Okay.
And that's mysticism.
Yeah.
She goes,
So-
find a smoother road.
Yeah. So it's trying to make being a Christian an easy thing to do, or something that feels good rather than what it truly is, which is it can often be you can suffer a lot for being a Christian,
Yeah.
and Jesus told us that we would.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know.
Why are you talking about it then? You don't know what it is.
You take the example of all the Christians in like third world countries and that, where they're being persecuted and suffering. If so many of them decided to follow mysticism, going, oh well, this isn't right for me. I'm not happy with this. I'll go do something else. So many of them would just turn and follow other people. That's
Yeah.
why mysticism is such a integrated lie into the church these days.
Yeah, it is. In many places, especially in America and Australia and a lot of Western countries, they think, I have a good life. That must be, that feels good for me. So that must be what God wants. He wants me to feel good.
Yeah.
Then what happens when things don't go so well?
Yep.
Exactly.
Then you just turn on God. Yep. Yeah. So mysticism is, putting trust in your emotions and your feeling. It's not putting trust in God, which is wrong. So there. Mysticism has been broken down for you.
Welcome to this week's edition of Broken. This week we're talking about the second chapter in the book Broken by Pastor Jonathon Fisk. And what's this chapter about, Jake?
Okay, well, the character he talks in this book is moralism, who he calls him the cowardly warrior. See, the idea of moralism is you can find God in your hands. That's his motto. He's the works guy. Do good works, get into heaven. If you don't do works, you won't get into heaven.
Okay, so everything Luther fought about pretty much
Yeah,
against the Catholics at that time.
See, the way it works is if you're using his funny characters that he used in Jonathan Fisk's book, there's pretty much God has his own two characters that he has. One called law and one called gospel. What moralism does is he makes sure that you only ever listen to law, and that he ties up and he takes gospel, he gags him and ties him up so that you can't listen to him.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing wrong with law. The Bible says that we have law for a reason. Luther said there's 3 reasons for law: for correction, protection, and direction. It shows us our sin. It helps us. It shows us examples of a holy life, and then it protects us from the disasters and damages of life.
Yeah. Shows us which way to go. Direction.
And moralism, he wants you to just focus on the idea of law as being, this is what you have to do. He doesn't focus on the gospel that says you are saved due to Jesus. He makes sure that you can't hear those words.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I've got here, because moralism, there's pretty much either 1 or 2 scenarios that are going to affect people that try to live this way. And these are what I've referred to as the 2 swords of moralism: legalism and liberty. The the liberty one, we'll go legalism first. Legalism is the sword of self-condemnation. If you look at the law, as in God has set the law on a bar, on a high jump bar, and if you listen to moralism, he tells you that you have to try and jump over that bar if you want to be saved, which is wrong because we don't have to jump it. Jesus has jumped that bar for us, and he will pull us up and over it. We don't need to jump it ourselves.
And he's the only one who could possibly get up to that higher level. We, as by nature sinful humans, can never reach God's level of perfection. So, yeah.
And the sort of legalism from moralism is if you try and reach that bar, you're going to continuously keep falling and falling, and you're going to look at yourself and go, I can never reach that bar, and therefore I'm no good. I can't be saved. And then you just dwell into a world of self-pity, self-condemnation, self-hate, where you just think you're not good enough for God, and that God doesn't care about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other sword is the sword of liberty, which is the one that you go, well, at the self-righteousness, you look at yourself and you go, well, I've done these good things, so I don't need to worry about these good things. You think that this one is, you look at other people and you go, well, I'm better than that guy, so therefore I am righteous. The sword of liberty means that you take the bar that God has set and you lower it until you find a level where you are able to just pretty much step over it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a self-righteous one, where you now look at your life thinking that I'm so good and perfect, I don't need to do all these other laws, and yet you're just sitting worse than anyone.
It's a very cunning trap that the devil sets there in moralism. And it's also commonly fallen into these days. Lots of people struggle with the fact that they're not good enough. They don't have any self-worth, or that they are good enough, and they think that's something that they've done to become good enough.
Yeah, and this is the whole problem that Luther suffered when he had a real depression because he didn't think he was good enough for it. But God untied the gospel, and Luther eventually heard the word, and he realized that he was justified by faith in God through grace, or justified by grace through faith, that it wasn't about his works.
It was about how good God is, not how good he has to be.
Yeah, because we're justified by faith alone and not by works.
Exactly.
So moralism has just been broken down for you. Okay, so for this week, we're looking at the third character, the tyrant scientist, rationalism.
Ooh, a tyrant scientist. That sounds scary.
Yeah. Well, rationalism, his idea is you can find God with your mind. He's the logical, rational guy that means everything can be proven, and if it can't be proven by science, then it must be false.
That's so prevalent in the world today, isn't it? Rationalism. You need to see it for it to be real.
Yeah, rationalism, people who are rationalists don't believe in God, so these are atheists, because, they can't logically, God is too above us, we can't logically comprehend him with our mind, and they are scared of things that they can't understand.
Exactly, yeah.
So rationalism is the scientist guy. He's a tyrant scientist, because not only when the character of rationalism he comes to you and he makes you want to feel stupid. He stands over you and will talk logical science and facts, quotation marks, and at you until you finally agree with his opinion and reject God and all the truth.
Yeah. So it's really saying, look at what you believe. How can you prove that? If you can't prove it, it must be wrong somehow.
Then this is interesting because the modern people who are rationalists are called atheists. They don't have God. Ironically, in the Roman times, Christians were called atheists because the Romans claimed that we didn't have a God because they couldn't see it. The rationalists in the Roman times were the Romans.
And they were
They had-
pagans.
They had statues, and if you said to them, "Where's your God? Prove me who your God is," they'd point to a statue and go, "See, there he is. I can prove it."
And then they would say to the Christians, "Where's your God?"
Point to his statue and prove that he's real.
Yes. So it's gone full circle, really.
Yeah.
The complete idol worship is really the same thing, the same rule they're following as atheists today in rationalism.
Yeah. And the point of rationalism, trying to find God with your mind, is just wrong. You can't think and try and outprove God with your scientific facts. Well, that's rationalism broken down for you.
Okay, so what have we got this week?
So for this week, the fourth lie is prosperity.
Ooh.
So this is the typical prosperity gospel that everyone goes around, where they think that if God really loved you, you'd have money, you'd be rich, you'd have a nice house,
A sports car.
you'd have a nice hot wife. But this is the problem with prosperity. She makes you look at your life, and she turns the cracks into canyons.
Exactly.
Her motto is, you can find God in material goods. She makes you look at your life and go, well, look, I don't have the greatest technology. I don't have the best car. My wife's ugly.
Oh my goodness.
I haven't got the perfect family. I haven't got a big mansion of a house. I'm not a billionaire. If God loved me, I should be rich. I should have all this great stuff. And yet, I don't have it. So therefore, I must be doing something wrong. Either God hates me or I'm doing some kind of wrong sin.
So it starts off as something that people look at the good things and say, oh, God must love me, but then it turns into them looking at what they don't have and saying, oh no, that must mean that God doesn't love me.
So, before the break, we left you with prosperity and the whole prosperity gospel. So now this week, we're going to look at her twin brother, pragmatism.
Very dangerous man, this one.
So pragmatism, his motto is you can find God in success. And so, leaving it where we were with prosperity, where she's convinced you that if God really loved you and if you were really doing God's work, you'd be rich, you'd have everything you wanted. So pragmatism, he's the one who comes along and tells you how you can get that. And he comes along with his biz-sin-ness.
Very clever.
He has the anti-10 commandments, is what he uses to convince you to get it. So first he tells you, you should covet your neighbour's stuff. He wants you to want what your neighbour has. Then he comes along and tells you how you can get it. So he teaches you, you should lie, you should steal, you should commit adultery, you should murder. That's how you get it, by taking it. Do whatever it takes to get it. And then he goes along with the more things. You don't need God, you don't need to honour your parents, you don't need to remember the Sabbath, you don't need to keep God's holy days. He's preaching this, that the church and family...
Holy name. You said holy days.
No, you don't need to remember God's holy name. He's teaching you that you don't need to go to church, you don't need to do all these things. Why do that? Those things just get in the way. You want to be successful. You want to be a rich billionaire and have all the babes and all the money you want. Oh, morals, God, all those things, they just get in the way. So you listen to him thinking, yeah, he's right. Until one day you realise that you're just living in a complete world of sin where you don't feel happy with what you've got, because everything you've just got through ill gain.
And these anti-10 commandments, he might not always put them like that. They might be tricked in a little bit more cleverly, like, oh, it's okay to tell this little lie if you'll gain something from that.
His whole motto is just success, success, success. Success, success, success. If you, at any point, you go, oh, I don't want to do that, he goes, yes you do, you want that. He's a little devil that sits on your shoulder when you're going, no, I can't take that. That's illegal. That's wrong. He goes, no, it's not. You want that, don't you? Yeah, so if you want that, you're going to go and punch that guy.
He speaks like this though because he's so small.
Yeah. So that's pragmatism broken down for you. So be wary to avoid him. And we'll join you next week for the 6th installment of Broken. Welcome to the 6th installment of Broken. So, throughout the book Broken, Pastor Fisk's, I say his name right.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Fisk.
He has these cute little characters, you might say, little dangerous guys you don't want to mess with. So going through, we've had the educated harlot mysticism, the cowardly warrior moralism, the tyrant scientist rationalism, the party girl prosperity, and the evil businessman pragmatism. So with each of these, he's kind of created a bit of a weird family tree, which is mysticism and rationalism are the parents of the incestuous twins, prosperity and pragmatism. You might be wondering why I call them incestuous. That's because the next character is the offspring of the twins, prosperity and pragmatism. So in this book, Pastor Fisk refers to this as the Where Church.
Ooh.
Taken the play on the word where with a WH and where, WER, from werewolf. And so I've kind of changed it a bit here for my summary because the Where Church is more the effect that comes from the lie, not the lie itself. So the lie itself is perfectionism. He's like I said, the son of prosperity and pragmatism. He comes in with the idea that to get to heaven, you need to have the perfect church, hence his name, perfectionism. He reckons that you need to have, he's a false prophet, and he reckons that the best way to prove that the church is, you're doing the right thing, is that the church is either making money, pragmatism, or full of people, prosperity. He wants you to believe in the success of the church. And so he also picks up a bit from mysticism, moralism, and rationalism. They're kind of mentors of him. So he convinces you things like, depending on whoever he wants, he'll get people to come to the church by appealing to their nature.
Okay.
So he'll appeal to the charismatics by trying to run mystic, contemporary praise song sort of services.
Yeah, with no real strong doctrinal basis, just feel good.
Yeah.
That's it.
He'll try to appeal to the moralists by going a bit more traditional services and trying to preach a lot of law and works and, set down a bunch of foundations of how you can earn your salvation.
Okay.
And he'll also appeal to the liberals by running liberal services and having real rationalized scientific interpretations of the Bible, such as using evolution and not taking the Bible as literal. And so what this guy, the false prophet perfectionism, does is he destroys the doctrine of the church by convincing the members of the church that it's not about doctrine, it's about how many people are going there. So if you're the pastor of the church, you come out one morning, look down at the congregation and go, the church is full this morning. There's like not even a space left. The pews are packed. Problem is, if you're using perfectionism's theology, most of those people there won't actually be true Christians. They won't even know anything about Christ. They're just there because you pretty much you bought them by appealing to their nature.
Okay.
And so that's where we get the Where Church, because this perfectionism destroys it to the fact of you go, where is the true church?
Exactly. Yeah. And the other problem with this is people going to a church, and then eventually they'll figure out it's not perfect.
Yeah.
So what happens then?
Then they just leave, and then you've just lost everyone.
Exactly. So, we're church.
We're church. So now we come to the seventh lie of broken licentiousness. So this lie is, if you remember when we did moralism, I introduced my two characters, law and gospel, and the idea of moralism was that he ties up gospel and makes sure that you only ever hear the preaching of law. So licentiousness is the opposite. He's pretty much the opposite of moralism. He's the young rebel.
I have a license to do whatever I like.
Yeah, he will tie up law, and he'll let you hear gospel. Licentiousness is freedom it's just freedom to sin, pretty much.
Okay, so he's taking grace and making it
A license to sin.
God will forgive me. I can do whatever I like.
Yeah, so like this, I
Ow.
could just punch Hayden, but the idea of licentiousness is God will forgive me, so I can do whatever I want. Now, but if you listen to the law, that's wrong. So I have to say I'm sorry to Hayden. I'm sorry, Hayden.
I forgive you.
See,
And then we have to hug each other.
no. But the point of licentiousness is just he comes under the disguise of freedom. He claims that, oh yeah, I got freedom. For people who do this go, I'm free from the law. So Jesus makes me free from the law, so I can do whatever I want. The truth is, Jesus makes us free from the law, but not from obeying it. He makes us free from the punishment and the guilt of the law. So that's licentiousness broken down for you. Okay, so welcome to the eighth lie of broken. I know what you're thinking. What? Eighth lie? I thought you said there was originally only 7. Well, here's the thing. In Pastor Fisk's book, he has only 7 chapters with the 7 lies, but he kind of, pragmatism doesn't appear as it's a separate lie. It kind of morphs in among rationalism, prosperity, and perfectionism, or the where church as he refers to it. So this is, in Pastor Fisk's book, the 7th chapter, but it's the 8th lie. It's called the ever lie.
Boom, boom, boom.
So we go back and look at all the other lies. Mysticism. You can find God in your heart. Moralism. You can find God in your hands. Rationalism. You can find God in your mind. Prosperity. You can find God in material goods and good things. Pragmatism. You can find God in success. Perfectionism. You can find God in the perfect church. And licentiousness. You can find God in freedom from the law. This is the problem. All 7 of those lies, what do they have in common? You can find God. That's the ever lie. Because the thing is, it's not about us. God doesn't want us to look for Him. He sent out His Son to save us. It's not what we do. It's what He does.
All these things that have been described before as ladders to reach God.
Yeah.
So it's not about climbing any ladder at all.
Yeah. God has climbed down to us. We can't climb up to Him. As the Augsburg Confession said, we are justified by grace through faith on account of Christ's death and resurrection. Not what we did, but what He did in His work. So that's the ever lie and the entire broken book broken down for you.